It's story time. The story begins. The words enter your mind. Neurons fire away deep into Imagination Central. There, any adventure can play out. Waves of blooming wildflowers roll in a light breeze. Butterflies flutter across the field, drifting up into the sky on a bright summer morning. You build a Persian palace from shadowy memories. Inside, sitting on his ottoman in flowing silk robes, a sultan speaks to his emissary, his eyes drawn thin as he issues a challenge to his people to bring him a riddle he cannot solve. You enter Storyland. Now you turn your heightened focus to today's storyteller.
Hi, my name is Mary Clemmons. I'm involved with the Spellbinders, the storytellers from Longmont Library. I get an opportunity to tell stories at the St. Vrain schools, which I love since I'm a retired school teacher. And I also have gotten to tell some stories at the nursing homes, and I absolutely adore that. If you get an opportunity to be a spellbinder, I hope you choose to do that because we get lots of positive feedback. My first story is called The 12 Dancing Princesses, and this is a Grimm's Brothers fairy tale. And I wasn't aware that the Grimm brothers didn't write any of their fairy tales. They simply compiled them. And they compiled over 211 stories, and they happened to be professors in a German university. And they had written stories about, it was the beginning of the industrial age. So they thought it was a good time to write down some of those stories that women used to tell while they were doing their housework and families used to share with each other. And 12 Dancing Princesses is one of those 211 stories. It happens to be a mystery, and I love mysteries, so I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Once upon a time, not in my time, not in your time, but once upon a time, there were 12 enchantingly beautiful princesses. And these 12 princesses shared a room, one long room with 12 ornate beds. And every night, their father, the king, locked the door outside their antechamber. There was a small room beside their bedroom, and he locked the door, and the girls were locked in every night. But every morning when he went to wake the 12 beautiful princesses up, they would be exhausted, and their brand new shoes that were put out that day were completely worn out. Well, the king couldn't figure it out, and the girls wouldn't admit a thing. So the king put out a grand announcement. I'm going to give one of my beautiful daughters in marriage, plus my kingdom when I die, to any young man who can figure out how my princesses are getting out and dancing the night away, and their shoes are getting worn out in the morning. I want to know how they're getting out of the castle. All the young men in the kingdom came rushing to get one of the princesses for his bride, and certainly to get all the kingdom when the king died would be a great thing. So every young man from far away came. And as they came, the first young man happened to be a prince from outside the kingdom. The king told him the story, and he introduced his lovely, enchanting daughters to the prince, and the prince set out for a meal with the princesses. And at the end of the meal, he was escorted to his room, which was right outside the room with the 12 beds. And the girls sat with him and talked with him for a few minutes. And the eldest princess handed him a golden goblet and said, "Have a drink before you go to sleep." He looked into her eyes. Conk. That was the last thing he remembered till the next morning. And I didn't mention the king said you have 3 nights to figure this out. Only 3 nights. The next morning, the prince woke up and said, "Tonight I'm staying awake." But again, he was fed a fabulous meal, took a drink as he looked into the beautiful princess's eyes, and conk. He was out till the next morning. This happened all 3 nights, and the king dismissed him. But each morning when he woke up, there were the princesses, sound asleep, exhausted, and their shoes completely worn out. This really did bother the king, and before long, every young man from all the town had come to try, and word had gotten out in other kingdoms. During all the time this was happening, a young soldier was coming through the forest. The soldier had a bad limp. He'd been hurt in battle. He wasn't able to fight anymore. As he was limping through the forest, he met an old woman. And the old woman said, "Please, sir, do you have $1?" The young man said, "Well, yeah." He reached in his pocket and he pulled out $3. He handed one to the old woman and he said, "Well, now I have $2 more. I'm going to go on into the kingdom tonight and see what $2 will buy me." And the old woman said, "That's all you've got?" And he said, "Yes, but I gladly will share what I have. And maybe when I get to the kingdom, isn't this the castle where the king is going to give one of his beautiful daughters to the man can figure out the mystery of where his daughters are going every night?" And he laughed because he didn't think there's any way he could figure that out. The old woman said, "Don't be so quick to laugh. I have something for you because you're so generous." So she took out of her backpack a worn, tattered cloak. As she took out the cloak, she said, "Put this on when you go in to see the princesses and after you eat your good meal, and when they offer you a drink. I don't want you to swallow the drink. Let it run down your beard and pretend like you've swallowed it, and then pretend you've gone to sleep." The young man laughed and said, "Oh, I'll certainly try that." And he took the ragged cloak and he put it in his backpack and he walked on towards the town. As he got near the town, the wind started to blow and he got cold. So he reached in his backpack and he took the tattered cloak out and he wrapped it around him. And when he looked down at himself, he was invisible. It was an invisibility cloak. And he said, "Oh my gosh, that old woman was either a witch or a good fairy. But just in case, I'm going to put the coat back in my backpack." And so he puts it in his backpack. As he continues on to town, he gets into the town and he knocks on the door, goes across the town, knocks on the door in the castle, and he's welcomed. Every young man has been welcomed. The princesses have been so kind to every young man. Of course, they won't give away their secret. Every young man is welcomed, and this young man, walking with his limp, went right into the castle, told the king while he was there. The king said, "Hey, I hope you can figure it out. I'm having a horrible time." The young man has a wonderful meal. He sits down with the princesses. They have a great meal. They walk back to where their bedrooms are, all 12 beds in one big room, and the young man's bed right outside the antechamber. The young man is offered a drink by the enchantingly beautiful eldest princess. She looks in his eyes. He takes a drink and pretends to drink it. And immediately lays down and begins to snore. Quickly, the princesses rush back to their room. They immediately start getting ready. But the youngest princess says, wait a minute. I feel like something's wrong." And the eldest princess said, nothing's wrong. Just look at that poor, sweet man. He's going to get 3 good meals. He gets 3 nights to try. He probably wouldn't get any good meals if he was out in the town. He's going to get 3 good meals and a good bed, and we're going to go and do what we've been doing every night. So the girls get ready, and all of them are ready, and the young man sees the girls are busy, and he rushes out, pulls his invisibility cloak over him, and stands by the door. The eldest princess taps the bed 3 times. 2, 3. Immediately the bed slides across the floor and the door opens up on the floor. All 12 princesses begin scurrying down stairs that are leading underneath the castle. As they get farther down the stairs, the young soldier who's walking with a limp tries to keep up with them. As he walks quickly, he accidentally steps on the youngest princess's dress. Ah! Ouch! Somebody stepped on my dress! All 12 princesses freeze. The eldest princess comes back and says, "What is the matter with you tonight? You are so meek and timid. Look, nobody's here." And of course, nobody was there. that the princesses could see. And they continue on down the stairs. As they get farther down, they come to the bottom of the stairs. And of course, the young soldier is much more careful this time. As they get to the bottom of the stairs, they go walking across a golden forest. The young soldier cannot believe his eyes. There's gold on these leaves. They shimmer and glitter. He goes walking across, and he breaks a twig. Crack! "Somebody's behind me!" shouts the youngest princess. Well, the oldest princess comes back to look, and she said, look around you. And the other sisters are getting quite upset with that youngest princess. And they said, "Really, what's your problem tonight?" And she said, "I don't know. I just have a feeling. Things aren't right." He said, "Well, come on. Stop being such a whiny girl tonight." And the princesses continue on. They go through a golden forest. They go through a silver forest. Again, the young soldier breaks a twig off because he has to prove to the king what's happening, to solve this mystery. And again, there's a crack. The young girl looks behind her. Again, sees nothing. Thinks, "Well, I'm going to let this go." So they continue on, and they continue through a diamond forest. So each time, the young soldier has broken a twig. He's got a gold twig he stuck in his pocket, a silver twig, and he's got a diamond twig. And the girls get to a golden lake. And at the lake, there are 12 rowboats, 12, 2 more, 12 rowboats, and in each rowboat is a handsome prince. The girls each climb in the rowboat, and quickly, the soldier in his invisibility cloak climbs in with the youngest princess. As they're starting off, the prince with the youngest princess said, "Man, this rowboat is hard to row tonight." And the youngest princess said, "I don't know what's going on. Everything is messed up tonight." And they continue on across the golden lake. When they get across the lake, up at the top, there's a beautiful castle. It's all lit up. They go into the castle, and again, the young soldier follows them in his invisibility cloak. They go in and they begin dancing the night away. There's wonderful food, wonderful music, wonderful drink. And the young soldier's having such a good time in his invisibility cloak, he even grabs a drink out of the youngest princess's hand and has a drink and does a few twirls with the girls. He's having a great time. But about 3 o'clock, the girls come back down the stairs. They're rowed back across the golden lake by the handsome prince, and this time the young soldier sits right beside the eldest princess and looks at her. She really is an enchantingly beautiful princess. And he comes with her across the lake. As they go across the lake, they end up at the diamond forest. And quickly, well, actually not so quickly, the girls are pretty tired, but the young man quickly goes up behind the oldest princess. As he's going up there, he follows her, and they go through the diamond forest, the silver forest, and the gold forest, and they get to the stairs. Quickly, the young man knows the way this time, so he goes in front, and he runs up the stairs, and he gets back in his bed and lays down. Of course, he's taken off his invisibility cloak and tucked it in his bag, and he's laying on the bed. The girls come up, and they say, "See, what were you worried about? He slept through the whole time we were gone." Well, the next morning, when he wakes up, the girls, again, are exhausted. Again, another brand new pair of shoes are worn out. This happens 3 nights. On the 3rd night, the young man follows them, and this time he brings back one of the golden goblets from the castle on top of the hill, from the whole town, the whole castle and the lakes and everything that's underneath the castle where the 12 enchantingly beautiful princesses live. Well, he brings it back and he puts it in his backpack. The next morning, the king says, "Okay, it's time to have an accounting. Did you find out anything?" Well, the young soldier said, "Actually, I did." And he begins to tell the king the whole story. He hears a rustling behind him. It's the girls. They're hiding behind the tapestry. He tells the king about going down the stairs, about the oldest daughter tapping on the bed, how the bed moves out, about the stairs, about the diamond forest, the gold forest, the silver forest, about the magic castle, and about the handsome princess. He tells the whole story, and the king says, "Well, that's quite a story. Do you have any proof?" And the young man takes out each one of the twigs, all 3 twigs. Then he takes out the golden goblet. And the young girls, you can hear them behind the tapestry. You can hear the sniffling from the youngest one. I told you there was something happening the whole time. You could even hear some musings of the other girls kind of stomping their feet. And the king said, "Come out here, daughters." He calls them out. They come out and stand behind beside their father. The youngest princess is just sobbing. "Oh, we've been found out." The other sisters are pouting. They're so angry they've been found out. And the oldest princess is just looking at the young soldier very thoughtfully. And the king says, "Is this true?" And the girls continue their pouting and their crying. And the oldest princess said, "Well, actually, it is. I think the young soldier has found out our secrets." And the king says, "He found out your secret, didn't he?" To the soldier, he said, "Choose any of my beautiful daughters to be your wife." And the soldier looks at all 12 of the daughters. He sees the one crying. He sees the others pouting. And he sees the oldest one looking at him thoughtfully. And the little soldier says, "Well, I'm not so young as I used to be. I'm going to choose the oldest princess." And she laughed and said, "Well, that's really flattering. You're choosing me because I'm the oldest?" And he said, "Well, actually, you're the most beautiful and you're the most clever. I'd like for you to be my wife." And she says, "Okay." And she is. They get married. They live happily ever after. But she says, "I know you had a little bit of help." And he said, "Well, actually," and he told about the old woman that gave him the invisibility cloak. And the oldest princess said, "She must have been a witch." And the young soldier said, "Well, actually, I think she was a good fairy." And the prince and the soldier lived happily ever after, and I think those sisters are probably still out dancing. Oh, the end. Okay, and I enjoy the story, mostly because it's a mystery, like I said, and I also wasn't aware of it as a Grimm's fairy tale, and I grew up on fairy tales, so it was one I hadn't heard of till lately. Okay, the second story I'm going to tell you is called Mustapha and Nuri'S. And this is a story told from Northern Africa. And I love to tell this story because it's one I hadn't heard before, and I got it from the Spellbinders list. And also it's a very practical story. It makes us all think about, okay, this could happen to me, and it's something I want to remember. Well, Mustapha and Nuri'S were 2 young men who grew up in Northern Africa. They often spent time in the sand. And as they got older, Mustapha became very wealthy. Well, Nuri'S remained his good friend, and they grew up and they had sons of their own. And one day Mustapha had to go across the desert. "Nuri'S, let's take our boys with us, and of course the servants, and let's take them with us, and let's go on a journey across the desert and give them an opportunity to be in the desert with us and kind of have a camping experience," because the boys were about 9 and 10. Well, the men agreed, and the servants packed up Mustapha's belongings and all the things they'd need for the trek across the desert to where Mustapha and Nuri'S were doing their business. The first couple of days went by without incident. On the 3rd night, Mustapha got pretty, he felt closed in. All the tents were real close together, and he thought, well, this would be a good night to go for a walk in the desert. And he started out walking. And of course, as often happens in the desert, the winds blew, and Mustapha became lost. Well, Mustapha's son woke up and heard the winds howling, and he felt the tent next to him and saw his father wasn't there. He went to the tent next door where Nuri'S was, and he said, "Nuri'S, Nuri'S, my father is not here. He must have gone for a walk, and the winds are blowing. I'm afraid he's going to be lost." And Nuri'S said, "He's my friend. I'm going out to get him." So he took a long coil of rope, and he tied it to the tent, and he started out through the forest. And Mustapha's son stayed with Nuri'S' son, and they both stayed in the tent, huddled against the blowing sands. And Nuri'S went out through the forest. The winds were blowing, and Nuri'S was shouting, "Mustapha! Mustapha! It is your friend Nuri'S! Mustapha! Mustapha! It is your friend Nuri'S!" And he called out through the night, and each time he'd uncoil the rope, still holding tightly to the rope. Eventually he heard, "I'm here!" And Mustapha went over and grabbed his friend. They followed the rope back to the tent. And the men went to sleep, and the boys, of course, stayed right by their father. They were thrilled that both men were okay. The next morning they got up, and Mustapha insisted that his servants carve something on a rock. A large rock was out right by where they had camped that night, and he told the servants what to carve. And the boys thought, well, this is taking a lot of our time. Why are the servants having to carve anything? Why aren't we going on our trip? Because, of course, they wanted to be doing the sojourn across the desert, and even Nuri'S was watching. The servants carved, etched in the rock, "This is the place where Nuri'S saved Mustapha." The boys looked at it and thought, well, that's nice. And they all packed up all their tents, and they continued on through the desert. The next week or so, the men had been hanging around together, and the boys had been hanging around together, and tempers got short, as often happens when we're really together for a long time. And Mustapha and Nuri'S got in an argument. Nuri'S said something incredibly hateful and incredibly spiteful to Mustapha, and everyone froze. Nobody talked to Mustapha like that. Mustapha's face grew very angry. Nuri'S stared at him, and both the boys started to tremble. In fact, Nuri'S son got so afraid he went and hid behind the caravan, and Mustapha took 3 long breaths. And he called his servants over to him, and he said, "Go over to the sand, and I want you to write this in the sand." Well, Mustapha's son went and got Nuri'S son, and they both went over to see what the servants were writing in the sand. And the servants had written in the sand, "This is the place where Nuri'S insulted Mustapha." The boy said, "Father, why did you write that?" And Mustapha looked at Nuri'S, and he looked at the 2 boys, and he said, "Because when somebody does something that is good to me, I want it always etched in my heart and etched in stone. When somebody does something to me that is mean and unkind, I want it to be written in the sand so that when the winds blow, it's gone and I'll forget it." Well, when Nuri'S had heard that, he went over and apologized to Mustapha. Both men shook hands and hugged each other, and the boys hugged their fathers. And as the years passed and as the boys grew up, every time they'd go across, they'd look at the sign that was etched in the rock that said, "This is the place where Nuri'S saved Mustapha." And they would remember the good things, not the bad things. And I love that story simply because that's what I want to remember. When people make me mad, it's like, oh gosh, I got to write it in the sand, not in rock. So, but okay, I have one more story, and it's a silly story. My third story is the story about Mortimer, and my grandkids love it. For one thing, it keeps them up a little bit longer. They don't have to go right to sleep. And it's actually written by a man who was a school teacher, and he wrote stuff for his kindergarten kids, and now I think he's just a writer. But in between then, this was a story that kindergartners love, and actually about any kid loves it, especially if they get to stay up a little later to hear it. And then it'll be stuck in your mind, and you'll say, "Why did you tell me that story?" Okay. Mortimer was an ornery little boy. He was about 3 or 4. He wore his mother out. One particular night, Mortimer's mother puts Mortimer on her shoulders. She walks up her 12 stairs to the upstairs. Thump, 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 thump. And she tosses Mortimer in his bed and says, "Mortimer, go to sleep." Mortimer shakes his head. And tired mother walks back down those stairs. Thump, 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 thump. She goes into the kitchen and starts washing the dishes. From the bottom of the stairs you can hear, clang, clang, rattle, bing, bang, gonna make my noise all day. Clang, clang, rattle, bing, bang, gonna make my noise all day. Well, Mortimer's father was trying to read the paper in the living room. The father can't read the paper while that noise is going on. He folds the paper and he walks up those stairs. Thump, 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 thump. He opens the door to Mortimer's room, looks at Mortimer and says, "Mortimer, go to sleep." Mortimer shakes his head. Mortimer's father walks back down those stairs. Thump, 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 thump. And he takes his paper out, sits down, begins to read the paper again. From the bottom of the stairs you can hear, clang, clang, rattle, bing, bang, gonna make my noise all day. Clang, clang, rattle, bing, bang, gonna make my noise all day. Mortimer's 17 brothers and sisters were sitting around the dining room table and they were trying to get their homework done. They couldn't get their homework done with all that noise. So they all walk up those stairs. Thump, 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 thump. They get to the top of the stairs, they open the door to Mortimer's room and they say, "Mortimer, go to sleep." Mortimer looks at him, nods his head. The brothers and sisters shut the door. They walk back down those stairs. Thump, 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 thump. They start doing their homework. From the bottom of the stairs you can hear, clang, clang, rattle, bing, bang, gonna make my noise all day. Clang, clang, rattle, bing, bang, gonna make my noise all day. Well, the mother didn't know what to do. The father didn't know what to do. The brothers and sisters didn't know what to do. They decided to call the police. Two big burly policemen come. They hear the story. They walk up those stairs. Thump, 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 thump. They look, open the door to Mortimer's room. They look at Mortimer, and in their big burly policeman voices, they say, "Mortimer, go to sleep." Mortimer looks at the policeman with his wide eyes, and he shakes his head yes. The policemen shut the door, and in their big, heavy footsteps, thump, 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 thump. They get to the bottom of the stairs, and they begin to say, "Well, that's solved." But from the bottom of the stairs you can hear, clang, clang, rattle, bing, bang, gonna make my noise all day. Clang, clang, rattle, bing, bang, gonna make my noise all day. Well, the policeman looks at the father and says, "You need to do a better job of raising your kid." The father looks at the mother and said, "It's all those parenting classes you make me go to." The mother looks at the 17 brothers and sisters and said, "Every one of you has become more trouble. You're not giving him a good example." Pretty soon the brothers and sisters are arguing with each other. The mother and father are arguing with the brother and sister. The policeman is arguing with the mother and the father. And everybody downstairs is arguing. And nobody goes upstairs to see Mortimer. And Mortimer goes to sleep. The end. And I love that because my kids will say, "I got this in my mind, I can't get clang, clang, clang." And I said, "Yes, you can. You let that clang, clang, clang put you to sleep." So it's a good one to tell grandkids. That's all.